Stacey Elzeva-Ricketts, Executive Director, Gathering for Women.
Robin McCrae, CEO, Community Human Services.
It was an excellent event we held for ending homelessness in our community, and there were 2 powerhouse women that spoke.
It was we commemorated the 3rd anniversary of Casa de Noche Buena, a shelter for homeless women and families with children that Community Human Services co-operates with Gathering for Women in Seaside. Well, there was a lively exploration of solutions. We started with defining the problems of homelessness in our community, and then the exploration of solutions, which included increasing the stock of affordable housing, accessory dwelling units were options, micro-housing was explored, the need for stable, ongoing funding, the concerns about government funding availability, the role of the community in ending homelessness.
And there's also a portion of it that talked a little bit about the face of homelessness and how it is and what you think. And even though you might picture the man underneath the bridge, it could be your neighbor who's housing unstable, who suddenly has a problem and is out of their house. It could be a young woman who's going to school. There's a lot of different faces of homelessness out there, and I think that's something to recognize.
It could be anyone, right? Like it's like just like a discussion for the community to like sort of get perspective, like background themselves, right? Because they haven't been in this situation, so they might not know what it's like. So it's like a good discussion for the community, right? To just meet together and just to see what's up.
Absolutely, understanding what that really looks like and how we can support our neighbors and our community.
We also heard from a guest speaker who was a guest at our shelter. Elizabeth talked about her personal experience. She had a courageous telling of her story, which included some other personal issues, mental health, substance use, and now she's permanently housed with her 3 sons. So it was a great success story and really gave all of us in the room some inspiration.
Is there anything that they didn't ask that you thought is important that you should just mention, or any final words?
There's numerous ways that people can support our homeless programs and other homeless programs in the community. And interested people can contact us on our website, or they can heed the call to volunteer during the annual or the biannual homeless count, or they can volunteer at a shelter or homeless program. So in addition to contributing financial resources, they can contribute their time, they can call their elected officials to advocate for homeless programs. So people who want to help, all they have to do is reach out and contact us, and we'll give them multiple opportunities to help.
I think supporting affordable housing and different opportunities for that is very important. I think contacting your elected officials and making sure that they're supportive of getting people off the streets and into housing is critical in our community.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Solving Homelessness, a community conversation. I'm thrilled, I know Stacey is thrilled, we're just completely floored that this is such a great turnout, and it really demonstrates just how much the community cares, how much they want to hear a meaty discussion and some discussion of solutions and what the issues are and what we can do collectively or individually to address the problems. Thank you so much for being here today. This is the 3rd anniversary of Casa de Noche Buena, the reason we're here. And Casa is a partnership between Community Human Services and Gathering for Women. We're going to start today's gathering with a former shelter guest, but before I introduce her, I'd like to share with you the impact that Casa de Noche Buena has had on our community in the short time that it's been here. So when we looked at rates of exits from shelters to permanent housing, from the day Casa de Noche Buena opened until present, the rate of success across the entire continuum of care was 46%. That's 46% of people leaving shelters in the continuum of care entered permanent housing when they left. And the rate for Casa de Noche Buena, I'm really happy to say, is 53%. So we're performing better than the continuum of care. When you combine that with transitional housing, which is where some of our clients go as an interim step to permanent while they're waiting for the golden ticket, right? The voucher they have, the landlord willing to accept the voucher is not as easy to find. So when you add transitional housing exits to the mix, we're at 61% successful exits. So in the 3 years we've been open, we've served 96 women and 127 people and 39 families. And we've helped 44 school-age kids in the coordination of their academic education. And I thought those were just nice points to point out so that you get an idea of kind of a global impact that we're making on our community. So it's time for me to introduce our guest speaker, and I'm pleased to welcome Elizabeth Macias. Please help welcome Elizabeth up here.
I didn't know there was going to be this many people. I was not ready, but I'm just going to go for it. My name's Elizabeth, and I was a resident at the shelter at Casa de Noche Buena. And I wrote down a few key points here. I was not prepared, but I just want to say who I am and who I was before I became an individual and wanting more in life. Well, I'm a mother of 3. Currently mother full-time for 1 since before I was in my addictions, and I made poor decisions in life. I left my 2 oldest boys with my mom in a better home where they wouldn't see domestic violence or go through any emotional hurt. And my other key point is having the want and not wanting the same things anymore, and how my old ways was not working anymore, and there is a difference that out there. There's more to life than just doing the same thing and it's not working anymore. So we have to do something different. It's just a want from that person wanting more and better. And I knew I wanted better, and I want better, and I know I'm capable a lot more. I know I have a lot of potential. Is just the support and the mental that some individuals where you become homeless they really need, and support and so yeah, I wanted better, and I knew there was better, and I know I wanted better for my kids, and wanted to live comfortable. Another key point, I don't know how to speak, but I'm trying my best. You're doing great. And yeah, it was hard to get motivated, to push myself, and having my son, and knowing that like I have to be better for him, and being able to care for him, even in the state that I was, I had to keep pushing forward, and I need that motivation in myself, and not letting him see how I was just isolating myself, and him picking up the same behaviors, and then like, the self-worth and the values that I had and that I have, and that I know that I'm worth it. And like a lot of individuals, like when we're homeless, we think that we're not worth it. You know, we don't deserve better, but we want better. And I had to work a lot in that within myself. I had to do that inner work and not like do the same things like before. And that was pretty hard. And I've been to 2 programs. I've been to Door to Hope, and I've been to House of Grace in San Jose, city team, and they've been very helpful and made me grow spiritually and find my worth and my value. And when I came back out here, I know there was resources that could help me and just want me to do more and better. And the community. Okay, I have to turn the page. So with all that, I had to advocate for myself, knowing like the background that I had. the domestic violence and picking up the charge where I knew I could have fought but wanted to get out. And I just like, for a person, it's just, we want easy way out, but a lot of people, we have to really work for it. And advocating for ourselves is the first step, because ain't nobody gonna do it for us. At least that's what I thought at first. But when I started advocating for myself, I started noticing that like Casa de Noche Buena started advocating for me, and like really came through. And I was there. They were patient. I mean, there's like a lot of attitudes and a lot of characters living in one building, and so yeah, that's a lot of loveliness and sharing and stuff. But I mean, we had to live through it, and I mean, they had so much patience. They were really helpful. I remember every day I would show up just to show up, and I had nowhere to go. I was homeless. I was sitting in the car with my 10-year-old. I got a job out here, and nobody knew I was homeless. I mean, like, I just continued pushing, striving, and I don't remember a day that I did not show up at Casa de Noche Buena. I was there talking to a friend person, but I kept showing up, and I noticed that they really advocated for me when nobody else did, you know. So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
It takes a lot of courage, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And right now, I believe you're in permanent housing, and you moved with your 3 sons? Yay, that's fantastic. So now I'd like to introduce to you Stacy L. Ziegler-Perkins, the amazing Executive Director of Gathering for Women. Stacy?
Good afternoon. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and a few new faces. So excited about ending homelessness. Today we'd like to start by thanking everyone who helped make the Casa de Noche Buena shelter a reality. And I know many of those in the room were a part of that, including our newly elected County Supervisor, Kate Daniels. We'd also like to thank the very generous sponsors who made today's program possible. They include Montage Health, the Fund for Homeless Women, Carmel Realty, Carmel Gives, Interfaith Outreach of Carmel, and our media sponsors, KZU and Monterey County Weekly.
So, as I said earlier, we're very grateful for the overwhelming response today. It just fills our hearts to see how much interest and enthusiasm there is in the community. So this event is sold out, but as I mentioned earlier, we are recording the program to share with the public later, just full disclosure.
And as Robin just said, we have a full house. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to ask you to submit your questions on the cards that you were given when you came in. And if you didn't get one, just raise your hand and a staff will come by and give you one. And staff will come by and pick them up along the way, so that when we're towards the end, Sara Rubin will read some of those questions and answer them for you. We might not get to all of them, so there's quite a few people here, but we'll do our best.
So in the interest of time, the speakers' bios are included in the program. I won't go into them in detail. I've had the pleasure of working with both Roxanne and Anastacia on the issue of homelessness for 9 and 10 years now, 10 with Anastacia and 9 with Roxanne. I worked with Roxanne when she was originally the administrative assistant at the Homeless Coalition, and then data administrator, and was the board president for a while. And Anastacia through her work primarily when she was with the County of Monterey. Roxanne is the County of Monterey's first Director of Homeless Services. She was formerly the Executive Director of the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers of Monterey and San Benito Continuum of Care. And she's a native of Monterey County, I believe Seaside. Go Seaside. And she also has lived experience with homelessness. And like Roxanne, Anastacia is a dynamic professional dedicated to helping ensure that everyone in Monterey County has a home. She currently serves as the housing manager for the City of Monterey and has held similar positions with Pacific Grove and the County of Monterey. Most recently, she's been working to relaunch Monterey's rental assistance program designed to prevent homelessness before it happens. And anyone who's worked with these two women know, if you want something done, you call Roxanne or Anastacia.
And finally, our moderator is rockstar journalism Sara Rubin, who also is an avid open ocean swimming fan, and so much more. Sara Rubin is the award-winning editor for the Monterey County Weekly, and moonlights as a docent at Tour House, the poet Robertson Jeffers' historic home here in Carmel. We're thrilled to have three dynamic women lead this conversation today. And don't forget, the conversation will continue in a reception on the patio, generously organized by volunteers, headed up by the amazing Carly Mao. Can I please have a round of applause for Carly? And of course, our staff and our volunteers. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all so much for being here, and thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing your story. I think it's really important to hear from a real person who's lived this experience. There may be many more people in this audience who have lived experience with homelessness. We don't necessarily know, and I think that's some of what we'll talk about to start off. I'm just the moderator, so I'm not going to do that much talking. But we're here mostly to talk about solutions, and that's where this discussion is going to head. But I thought we would start off with just a brief discussion of the problem to help identify and define the scale of it. So the biannual point-in-time census was just conducted in January for 2024. That data is not yet out. So I'm just going to give some data from 2022, which is the most recent published data. This shows 2,047 unhoused people were in Monterey County. That's spread out across every jurisdiction, except that year there were 0 homeless people counted in the city of Gonzales. And I'm hoping first that, Roxanne, you might just help us understand what that number is, what it shows us, what it doesn't show us, how complete it is as a data point, and if we know any more about how many unhoused people there are in our county and a little bit about who they are.
Thank you. So this is really authentic because we have not actually shared the questions. So the number 2047 is a point in time, literally a snapshot. And there's a HUD regulation under 24 CFR 578. I like to say that just to show off. What we're talking about. So the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers, which serves as a lead continuum of care entity for our county and San Benito County, they're the ones that conduct that biennial point-in-time count. And the interesting thing about that is that, one, we have to live with it for 2 years, so we do everything we can to do the best we can on capturing that data. It can take 200 to 400 volunteers to conduct that, so please pay attention when those come out and they're looking for volunteers. It's very important. Most of the time, community members know where people are staying. And that's why we need the community to help us really understand the complexities of our local homeless problem. Interestingly enough, there's another data set that we have access to, and it's the collection of data through the Homeless Management Information System. And most agencies that are serving this population are mandated either by the state or federal government to utilize that database. That database says that we're serving around 6,000 people a year. So it's kind of interesting that so much of our funding is tied to that point in time count, but we're serving 3, sometimes 4 times the amount of people with that funding for that number. And that is why it's so important, and I'm glad you're here today for us to really dig into the complexities of the problem and how we're trying to navigate all of these issues as we come up with solutions.
Anastacia, please.
Thanks. Yeah, just to add to that, the point-in-time count was developed by the federal government, and one of the big differences in that number for the West Coast versus the East Coast is the East Coast, the federal government usually favors the East Coast in the way that a lot of our formula allocations are for our federal funding. So they miss out on there's a key difference. Why everyone's like, why is it January? Why is this happening in January? And we've had issues with rain and storms when we're out there counting. And one of the big issues is they thought in the East Coast, they house most of the homeless. So if you look at the East Coast numbers, it's easier to do that point in time count when you can go walk through a shelter or transitional housing, people are actually housed. But here on the West Coast, when you see that number, most of our homeless are unhoused, and especially California. This is why Casa de Noche Buena, the Share Center in Salinas, our shelters are so critical for that. But that's a big part of the count. I just wanted to point out.
And thank you for that. Maybe we'll talk. I have all these questions I want to talk about. I'm thinking maybe we start by talking about some of the most publicly visible nature of unhoused people, and some of what can be documented in that finite point in time count is encampments. And when we were preparing for this, we talked about all the different kinds of shelters and different kinds of housing. And I'm thinking maybe you could start by talking about some possible solutions there, and I think how much is or isn't that representative of the community at large who we need to be serving.
So homelessness is this wide, very wide scale. And as Robin had mentioned, I have lived experience, but I was working for a world-class resort. I had a weekend job and I was going to school at nighttime full-time. You could not tell for the life of you that I was experiencing homelessness. So a lot of times there's this misconception that every time we're speaking about someone experiencing homelessness, we're thinking about the guy under the bridge, we're thinking about this, and we are thinking about them. But there's also so many more people, and I think that we can't lose sight of the fact that most people in this community are housing unstable in some way. The new fair market rate just came out. So does everybody know what a fair market rate is? So HUD will determine how much rent is appropriate for your community. And that's what housing vouchers are usually tied to, is that rate. So for a studio apartment, hold on.
Not here.
A studio apartment in Monterey County is worth $2,300. So this is not a strap up your bootstrap situation we're dealing with. This is a housing crisis. And we have to take into consideration why people have to double up and triple up inside of homes. Most people are housing unstable. If you have somewhere to stay right now, it is unwise for you to move. That's the deal. And I'm sorry, I went on a tangent. I don't even remember the question.
You're answering a different question I have, which is about the pipeline and looking at all these different kinds of housing. And we could start at either end of this, right? But why don't we talk about some of that pipeline then? How much, and I think that a lot of people, when they think about homelessness and what it looks like, and some of it does look like encampments. That is a real dimension of the communities in which we live. But some of it also looks like overcrowding in homes that is not necessarily visible, but maybe is visible in different ways. You see a lot of cars parked in a driveway, and you can tell that more than one family lives in that home, for example. And different agencies use different definitions. People who may be defined as homeless, according to the K-12 education code, don't even perceive themselves as homeless in some cases, but that's maybe too much preamble. I should do less talking. This is what happens when you give me a microphone, I'm sorry. But how much of what we are talking about is a need to build housing that is affordable with a capital A, and also market rate units, and how much will that then alleviate some of the pressures that we see at all these other levels of the crisis? If you want to start off, Anastacia.
Okay. So I guess this is a tough, has anybody here read Homelessness is a Housing Problem, the book? It's a great book, and it really boils down to no matter what your situation is, you can be an addict, you can be just down on your luck, whatever the situation is that brought you to homelessness, it doesn't matter. You know, there are people who are housed that have mental illness. There are people who are housed who have addiction. We all suffer the same ailments in life. It's just, is there housing for us available that we can live in and get through our daily lives? And we don't have all of that housing. So when we talk about the overcrowding, the McKinney-Vento, I'll let Roxanne talk about the differences in the homeless population as far as we see them in the eyes of the federal and state government, but everybody, we have such a huge housing crisis. When I get calls daily from my office, my housing office, and it's like, my rent's going up, I can't afford it. There's nowhere else to go, there aren't enough units. When I talk to property managers, I ask them, when I'm talking about the new rental assistance program we're launching in the city of Monterey, what do people need? What do you as a property manager see your people having problems paying rent? And they say, they're leaving because there's not enough supply, bottom line. So if somebody has a home and there's no mobility too. So say you have a home that you bought 15 years ago. You're not moving up into some new house, you're making more money, you're doing well because there's no housing stock. So that's not leaving that unit for maybe a younger homeowner who is ready to enter the market. Nothing's available, right? So that it's just we're crushing what little supply we have, and people are having a very hard time finding any units to move into. So we know homelessness is a housing problem, we just bottom line need to see it that way.
Does everybody know what the two main industries in this county are? I bet you could guess. So I'm just gonna have fun with this one because for every 100 extremely low income households in this community, we have 16 apartments that can serve them. That's dire. And we're actually underperforming compared to the state, which I think is at like 22 per 100. And we have our own issues. We have water supply issues in Monterey County. We don't have the infrastructure. You know, we're blowing through wells left and right. There's all kinds of things that's happening here that causes the housing shortage, but it doesn't mean that we can't keep fighting for it and we don't keep trying. And we have to be very innovative and come up with solutions that may not be traditional. Another thing that renters are facing is that landlords require you to make 3 times the amount of rent. So if you are getting a studio apartment at $2,300 a month, you have to net almost $7,000 in order for you to qualify. $7,000 a month times 12, we're looking now, so you have to make like $80-something thousand. So for a lot of people, that's totally attainable. But for a lot of people, that's not. And when you really start digging into who is not able to do that, it's actually like mind-blowing. These are people who run our society. The medical receptionist at your doctor's office doesn't make enough money. A new teacher doesn't make enough money. This is wild. And we need these people in our society. We need them. So what are we going to do? Anastacia, tell us the answer.
Do you have another question, Sarah?
Well, Roxanne just beat me to the question. That is the question, I think, is in these cases, for people who may currently be housed and are unable to move, or people who are possibly at risk of becoming unhoused or are crowding up in these units, who are employed, making arguably a decent salary. What are the solutions at this tier of the housing crisis? Is it, rent control? Is it rental assistance? Is it that we just need to be building more and that will drive the market rates down? Is it that we need more units that are designated as affordable for people at a certain income level? And the folks that you're talking about may not qualify under HUD definitions for those units anyway. So what kind of series of solutions can serve this sector of the community? If you want to start, Anastacia, because some of these are programs underway in Monterey.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So we have it's really interesting. We're just starting the rental inventory in in the city of Monterey. I know Salinas is also starting that. We're having communication like, wow, what are we doing here? Because it's some of the first in our county to start these programs. And a lot of property owners are asking me, what am I going to get out of this? It's just a burden. It's just something I don't want to have to do. And it's another layer. We're all busy. We all have so much to do every day. Well, I was just looking at some of the data today, and I was talking to our software developer, and I was noticing, if you look at each parcel and the value of each parcel, and we start thinking about the economics of a parcel, right? And you add an ADU to that parcel, well now, the value of that parcel just went up. So as we go through this inventory process, I'm thinking, wow, we're going to be able to see how as we increase density through the housing elements, right? Everybody's been familiar with the housing elements. We're looking at how can we increase density and how can we build our communities for the next 8 years and get these units online. The state's telling us to build this many affordable, this many moderate income, above moderate income. Well, that means those parcels are now worth a whole lot more money with some of the new legislation, and I'm starting to see that in this inventory. So we can build more, and the value of our community goes up as we build more when we're looking at it. And I don't think we've all thought about it that way. So as we continue to increase our density, our whole community is increasing value. So we need to start thinking of it, this is a way to increase our community's value and increase what we're giving to our community too, which is housing. Where are my grandchildren going to live? Well, they can live here with me if I build more units on my property. Or we find units where we can build more density. We are just increasing the overall value to ourselves, to our cousins, to our friends, to our community members, and to those of us who own property. So I think those are some of the things we're going to start seeing with rental inventory, with trying to understand what's happening on our parcels at property and how we build in the future.
So I usually tell people that I'm a homelessness person, not a housing person, and I think a lot of people think it's the same, and it's not. I look at homelessness like it is the emergency room. So we're here, we're dealing with the symptoms, we're dealing with the reactions, but we're not actually dealing with like the core things. So I'm going to do my best to speak about housing, but I want to be a little careful. My answer, Sarah, is that we have to do everything. There's like literally nothing that we can just say we're not going to do that because the situation is that serious. What we're seeing across the state of California is senior citizens are becoming homeless faster than any other population. And we're also having an issue where not only are these senior citizens, but there's a lot of inappropriateness for this to put them inside of a homeless shelter, a traditional homeless shelter. And some of that has to do with someone's ability to meet ADLs, just being able to take care of oneself. And we need to have vouchers. We need to be able to subsidize these incomes. Once you get to the Social Security age, if you don't have other sources of income coming in, you're screwed. Because this rent they don't care. There's no prejudice on this rent. It will take anybody out. So we need more vouchers. We need more flexibilities on the vouchers. Because our vouchers, they're all federal, and the federal government treats things very differently than the state of California. We need state vouchers. We need a voucher that comes from the state because the state understands our population, it understands our industries, and it understands the needs of our people. But if we don't start slowing down this pipeline into homelessness, we are going to have a really bad situation very soon on our hands. And I think everyone is really paying attention to the senior population right now.
Yeah, if I can add on to that, I do get calls daily as well on the seniors, and a lot of seniors that I hear from, they want to live, we hear this all the time, they want to stay on the peninsula. It doesn't matter, like, this is their home, this is their community, and community is so important. Like, you rely on your neighbors. Can you walk my dog when I'm not around? Can you just keep an eye on things? And when we lose that infrastructure of our community, it affects all of us. So if you lose your neighbor, maybe you don't get the same neighbor, right? It may not be, it's not the fabric of where you are and who you are and who's around you. So we depend on our neighbors. We want to keep them around. And all the seniors I keep getting calls from, my rent has gone up. What do I do? Because I'm on a fixed income and their money's not flowing from anywhere else. And that is a huge problem. And that's what we're hearing. And how do we solve those specific, so when we're talking about the spectrum of homelessness, people are thinking always in this, we have it, it's a huge issue where it rolls across housing. It's all these different housing types, and I'll say this for seniors, you think you buy a house, you think you're going to be there forever. Well, now your circumstances have changed. All of us in life, our circumstances change. We go to college, we live in a dorm, we, end up maybe going in an apartment and getting our first job, and then we live in a house, and then maybe we think we're going to be there forever, but no, I need to live in assisted living. Assisted living is not enough. Maybe I need memory care. All of these stages of our housing needs. Housing needs are huge across. Maybe we don't hit one of those housing needs for 20 years, but when we do, how are we going to manage that housing change? And we've got to have enough housing for everybody. And when we talk about seniors, I've had a senior that I was trying to help. Roxanne probably helped me with her too, and a few of them. And I mean, we work, like, that's the great thing. Like, all of us in the room, we're all friends. We've all been working together for so many years. We hold each other. What can we do? How can we solve this? And I had a senior who was working with iHelp, going from church to church every night, and I took her to Gathering for Women that day to get her lunch because she came in my office for some help. I said, make sure you get over there for lunch in time, because she wanted to make it for lunch, just so she could have her lunch. Then she said, I always forget how to get to the library from here, the Monterey Library from Gathering. It's like, what, 2 blocks? And her memory's starting to go. So you've got a homeless person on the street who they're sleeping on a cot every night. They can't get into, they don't have a bed to sleep in. Then you've got memory issues and you're going a new place, you're sleeping every night, you're waking up like, where am I, right? And then you can't remember how to get from one place to another in a very small community. This is a population that's going to get hit hard, and like you said, this is not every situation, not every shelter is set up and equipped to handle, but all we're doing is trying to help that person for that night, for that day, to get their lunch, and get resources for them. So we've got to think about all the needs as we think about this.
So I think that's, moving maybe from this idea that there's a pipeline and we can keep people housed and out of being unhoused, looking at those who are unhoused. I think maybe it's a good segue to thinking about some of the solutions at this scale. As Roxanne sent me some data just on the number of shelter units that has generally been going up. It's places like Casa de Noche Buena, Schumann Hart House that opened late last year that had a 250-person waiting list when it first opened, just to give you a sense of the need. And I believe still has a 250-person waiting list, is that right? But there was an increase, this is from 2017 to 2022, of emergency shelter beds increased by 110% over that period of time, to a total of 576. So if there's 6,000 people who are unhoused in this county, that still gives you a sense that's really a small fraction, and that's not a long-term solution, but that, and that number has gone up since then, but 576, what, do we need more shelters? And there are some real success stories just in the past few years, since 2020. There's the Navigation Center in Chinatown and Salinas. There's the Share Center in Salinas, Casa de Noche Buena, Schumann Hart House. So there's a list, and each of those, we could talk in more detail about any of them and some of the forces at play, funding-wise, politics-wise, that went into enabling each of those. But I wonder if you might talk a little bit about those examples, and if those are what we need more of. Do we need something different? Do we need to just expand those efforts and make more similar places? Is that a good model to repeat?
So once upon a time, we used to just have emergency shelters. And emergency shelters is exactly what it sounds like. It's a safe place for you to stay right now. And probably about 4 years ago, the Middlebury Institute of International Studies had reached out to me in my former job, and they was like, we're data junkies, can we have your database? We just need to know, like, ask us any questions and we'll find the answer in there. So I asked them, what are the 2 interventions that significantly reduce a person's length of time experiencing homelessness? Here's the data, go. And they came back and they said rapid rehousing plus emergency shelter. And what we did with Casa de Noche Buena and, well, I don't know if Schumann Hart House yet because it's still very new, but we turned a few emergency shelters into housing navigation centers. So we actually gave emergency shelters steroids. Like, now you have money to actually help them move on to their next step. So we need more housing navigation centers. We need housing-focused solutions, and we need grace on our service providers. Because service providers are asked to do the impossible. Find housing in 6 months, because emergency shelter overlays call for 6 months. And it actually takes about 9 months to find housing for someone. So do that, do it quickly, and if you fail, we're going to take your money away. That is the reality of what Robin has to deal with. So when she gets up here and she talks about the successes of Casa de Noche Buena, it's because they have the tools to be successful.
Can you just describe, when you talk about a 6-month overlay, what that means?
So every community has rules about zoning. There's like zoning rules, and emergency shelter zoning usually calls for 6 months. That's the length of time someone is allowed to stay in that emergency shelter bed. On county-owned property, where emergency shelters, housing navigation centers exist, we tend to be much more lenient. But there are some jurisdictions that are sticklers, and I'm not speaking just about Monterey County, it's across the nation. There are some jurisdictions that are sticklers about that 6 months. But I think that there's enough of us fighting, and as long as people are working on themselves, that's all we care about. You know, there's this perception that everyone just wants a free ride, and that's not true. I think people just, to your point, people just need to be heard, believed in, and supported. And it's amazing how far humans will go in that environment. So, and that sometimes, trust takes much longer than 6 months. Think about that one time someone burned you and how long it took for you to get over that. You know?
And if I can add to that, the 6 months also tends to come in with federal funding requirements. So a lot of the funds that are used to fund shelters on the federal and state level have a maximum of 6 months. They want to see people move from shelter into some sort of additional, permanent or transitional housing. And so that's part of that that definition of what is a shelter or a navigation center. And I will, Roxanne and I've been through some of the funding, like when you look at the overall budgets and funding for our shelters, you know, kudos to Robin, because each one of those shelters costs like over $1 million to run annually. And the Share Center, we worked on as well back in the day, and we went through the pain of getting those, you know, shelters approved, and through, you know, I remember just courageous board of supervisors, courageous council members. We went through in Seaside. I remember the community, what a courageous community. I remember those meetings vividly, where the community came out at the beginning, just like, we don't want this, you know, and then after I just loved seeing the transition where finally, like, Seaside was like, well, we can handle this, and I think it's been great, right, for the community, and people are proud of these shelters. Salinas too. I remember getting yelled at in a room of like hundreds of people yelling at me, and I was like, you know, and people are so proud of that shelter. I'm like, the first time I went with a group of like people who, like politicians and stuff, I'm like, oh, we're all happy about this now? Okay.
We did it.
Oh, I didn't know what to expect. But just seeing the community thrive with these shelters. Yes, we need more, but we need to think about the cost of running the shelters. But what would we do if we didn't? People would be on the street. They would be going to the ambulance, you know, calling the ambulance if they thought something was wrong. You know, our police would be out there. What does it cost our community if we're not housing people, right? And so that's what we have to think about. And remember back when I said, oh, the federal government does that point in time count in January because they thought everybody would be housed and sheltered that night. Thank you. Sheltered that night. Yeah, we should be sheltering people. And so it's hard. We can't build the housing fast enough, but maybe we can get enough shelters up and ready to go.
Thank you. A lot of great points in there that I think a few of them are really worth following up on. And one, just because I've been thinking about the success of some of these shelters, and particularly because we're here today celebrating the 3-year anniversary of Casa de Noche Buena. And thank you to Wyatt, who videotapes all of these public meetings all over the peninsula. And thanks to that video that you took in 2019, I just rewatched to relive one of the first community meetings at the Oldemeyer Center, and I think I saw Councilmember Pacheco here too, that Councilmember Pacheco hosted, and so this is going back to 2019, before Casa de Noche Buena had a name, and it was just an idea, but the vitriol in that room it's you can feel it listening to the comments. And I live in that neighborhood. I'm a neighbor of Casa de Noche Buena. I walk there all the time. I just wrote about this. It's in today's paper. You can read about it. And it's unambiguously a success story. But the fear that was voiced, I think you hear it come up again and again. Also, Anastacia knows that it's come up in regard to even home key projects, transitional or supportive housing, and permanent supportive housing. I'm sorry, not transitional. And I wonder if you have some lessons about what has worked, bringing the community along, or is the solution to not worry about bringing the community along, you just go build it and then prove to them that there is not crime, there is not some really scary situation on the street. You know, how do you get projects done when we see that these are examples of successes, and yet, again and again, every proposal becomes a magnet for just a lot of fear, I would say.
NIMBYs are aggressive. They are very loud, and they show up. And one of the things that I've learned is that we don't have the YIMBYs showing up. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Sorry. NIMBYs is a beloved term for people who say not in my backyard. and it's ironic because when you think about unsheltered homelessness, it'll be in your backyard regardless. So either we give people the services, the safety, the housing that they need, or they'll be in your backyard literally. It's just, Yippies, shout out to the Yimpy Coalition. Those are the Yes in My Backyard. And now there's even a new one called Yes in God's Backyard, because churches are now starting to stand up and say you could use our properties.
Yeah, I'll just add that, with trying to get a community, I visited a nonprofit in the Bay Area, and they were doing a transitional housing for families, and they told the same story. It's the same story wherever we go, that initially people feel that, my gosh, everything's going to be a disaster, and I'm going to have more traffic, people are going to come here. Well, there are things in your neighborhood, like your neighbors, and that they're watching out for you. Well, a lot of these transitional units or permanent supportive housing units, they become your neighbors, and they're there. A lot of them are watching out for the neighborhoods. I've heard really positive things about some of the housing that I know that is in Monterey, and the neighbors, they're just neighbors like everybody else, and it's after time, all of these situations, all of these different housing situations that seem really difficult end up becoming, they're just your neighbors, right? They're housed. They're not the homeless anymore. They're the housed people next door. So I think, and it does help property values. They've done studies nationally on affordable housing, which includes all types of affordability in housing. And remember when I said you build an ADU, your property value just goes up, you split your lot, you build more units on it. Now, is your single family property worth more if you're able to do that? Oh yeah, it is. So you look at the economics of it, if we build more, our values tend to go up. Your assessed parcel value goes up because you've got the improved value and you've got the land value, and that just keeps going up. So those are things we need to think about as we look at building more and dealing with all of this. And that is it so bad if we're taking, so back to the San Jose story, here this person came and really angry, I don't want this transitional housing for families, and then once it got in place, he came back to the city council and because they were presenting, and they said he was crying in tears, like, I can't believe I felt that way, and I'm so sorry, and he gave a huge donation to that transitional housing because he realized the impact it made for the community, for his neighborhood was better, it was an improvement to what had been there before. So these types of improvements are hard to see. It's easy to feel like the world is it's changed, but in the end, I've never heard one story where it hasn't improved the neighborhood.
It's interesting when people stop having to fight for their lives, and they start to settle and become self-sustainable. They don't need to do those things. They don't need to steal food. They don't need to steal and they don't have to live outside and have trash and light everywhere. All of that stuff goes away. So to your point, it does make your neighborhood better. It's just, my strategy now is I just bring people to the shelters. It's more of a, let me show you, because you clearly don't believe me. And also, thank you, because I'm bringing a nonprofit from Santa Cruz County to go check out Schumann Heart House next week. Because and this nonprofit, they want to get into the shelter housing navigation world. And they're dealing with a lot of community pushback as well. So I think that the best thing we can do is just keep showing up and showing out and highlighting the good work. You can't even tell Casa de Noche Buena is there. You can't even tell Schumann Heart House is there. You would drive right past it and think, what a great neighborhood.
I do want to ask a little bit about funding and you made a great point that I think is evident to policymakers too, that, ultimately it costs us less as a society if there is more care upstream in all sorts of ways, that if people are housed, there is less burden that we all collectively have to pay for. And yet, the funding streams don't necessarily reflect that knowledge, and the state is looking at a really significant deficit, and the state has been a really significant contributor to these continuum of care services and shelters in the past few years. So what's next? Are any of these in jeopardy, and or where do you go, where else do you look to put together funding sources?
We are at a funding cliff. So during the pandemic, we had a wave of money come through our community. And we've never seen this type of money before. We were putting people in motels, opening new shelters, buying hotels. We were just doing everything we possibly could to make a difference, and we did. So the difference in the point in time count from 2017 to 2022 is a reduction of 38%. That's a lie, 28, sorry. 28%, but still significant. We don't talk about that enough, right? Like you hear, homelessness is getting worse. It's like, yes and no. The population is changing, for sure. The demographics is changing. The reason why people are experiencing homelessness is changing. But we are now at a funding cliff, and we knew this was coming. To put it into perspective, this is also a fun fact. Because our point in time count went down, our funding went down, which just like doesn't actually equate. You guys are doing so good. I'm going to penalize you. It's wild. So I've been fighting that fight on the state level for quite some time, and now I'm pushing onto the federal level as well, because you can't punish Monterey County for doing our jobs and doing it well. And I don't mean the county of, I mean all of us collectively, like rallying around this conversation and doing what we can. But we do have to come up with something. Right now, the new budget that the governor had just announced in January, it does not include something called the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program. That program is around $6-7 million between the County of Monterey's allocation and the Continuum of Care, which is led by the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers. I see you guys are in the building. $7 million might, I don't know, some people says it sounds like a lot of money, it's really not. And it's spread a lot across multiple organizations. Some agencies get around $100,000. Sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. That is one staff member. And if you're running a 24-hour program, you need multiple staff members. And if it's housing first, you need even more staff members, because you want to meet people where they are, and you don't want to burn out your staff. And you also don't want your staff fighting for their housing stability as well. Because how can you serve someone else when you're suffering from the same exact issue? So I think right now we need to really lean in on our community. We really do. We need for our community members to stand up and say, we are on the right trend and we're going to keep fighting. Call your state electeds. If you're a state elected in here, I am so sorry. But we have to fight, and we have to keep asking for more and just pushing and using great organizations to do the good work.
I want to follow up on that and see if you're able to offer more specifics, because I'm starting to look through audience questions here, and people want to know sort of what their charge as individuals is, and if they're going to call their state lawmaker and ask them for something, what should they ask for? Is it a change to zoning policy? Is it to authorize more money? It looks like is it Prop 1? The only one this time is going to pass. It's too soon to say certainly that it passed. So there's a $6.5 billion almost bond for mental health services and housing from the state, but that also has impacts sort of redefining what the county can do with mental health services funds. are there specific things that people in this room might call and ask representatives in Sacramento to do?
I would say both the federal government, I just want to add that in there, Congressman Panetta, and, you know, because we really need more homeless funding. We don't get our share of the federal cut. California has, what is it, 30% of the homelessness, and when the formula allocation, it favors East Coast cities. It's just a way, it's a very complicated formula. It literally will take an act of Congress to change that formula. We're just not getting we're not getting the amount of money it's based on like another formula that doesn't have anything to do with homelessness. And so when we look at emergency solutions grant funding, we're getting very little to match our population needs. And
$250,000 a year.
it used to be 180, at least a little bit, right? Yeah, that's not enough, right? For all of our agencies that are helping homelessness. So state, the other thing with the state is we've got the permanent local housing allocation, PLHAs, some of you have heard of it, but that is a state program that is, so yeah, we need stability in our funding. I think that's one of the biggest things. We've been through this when we were dealing with COVID and we were getting all the funding that Roxanne was talking about. Well, it's all changing, and then we just went to we were like, what workshop were we at the other day? It was like a CalAIM. It used to be whole person care. That whole program changed for our behavioral health needs, which is a huge portion of how we help our homeless population or any other population that has behavioral health needs. You know, they're cutting into that funding. Well, let's force housing through that. Let's do. It's so complex, and our agencies that are serving the homeless have to answer to every agency, whether it's the feds, the states, and it's hard, right? So we need stability in our funding, and we need it to be constant so that we can guarantee at least certain amount of delivery to the community for that impact that we need. So permanent local housing allocation, gosh, if there was any way that could, certain programs like that could be increased. HEAP, HAP, oh my gosh, all of the different funding sources we've been through. I can tell you, was it HAP 1, HEAP 1? I don't remember. When Casa de Noche Buena started, HEAP 1. Share Center in Salinas, we were working on that, and we were kind of struggling as a community. Where do we put this money? We're getting, what was it, $12 million. It never happened before. We were so excited. And we're like, what are we going to do? And then we're like, we got to build a shelter. And how about $6 million for that shelter? $6,018,000. I remember, you know, because I worked on that and that grant. And everyone was like, no, but we need it for this. And we're struggling and pulling every which way. And Casa de Noche Buena got some of that, 1.8, and that's how our shelter started. It was a one-time crazy funding, and I thought, well, maybe we're being so greedy, and we're going to build this shelter and take all this money to build the shelter in Salinas, and we need to make sure there's something on the peninsula, and we're struggling with $12 million. Think about that. And we got 2 shelters built, and I don't know what we would do if they weren't here today.
Right. Made a big difference, for sure.
I want to just ask you a couple of short questions from the audience that we haven't covered, and then we're going to wrap up. One that a few people asked about is when there are sweeps by public works agencies of encampments, where do those people go, and will we see them again in a different encampment?
100%. So it's very complicated working for a government agency. As I mentioned, people are very good at complaining, and if you find the right person at the government level, that encampment could easily be removed. But they do end up showing up somewhere else. And that is something for us to really reflect on. Because sometimes, a lot of times, people living in that encampment are actually not bothering anyone. And what the issue is that I just don't want to see it. And if we don't have enough emergency shelter beds, Casa de Noche Buena, 300-ish. Schumann Heart House, 300-ish people on the waiting list. Sheriff Center, 600. This is a problem. And it's not like we can just say, we have a place for you to go, please go there instead. It's really just a matter of, you just can't be here because that person doesn't want you here. So it's a weird line to walk because we're public employees. We have to serve everyone. But it's very complicated. And my strategy is, I've been partnering with different jurisdictions. So you may have heard of the first round of encampment resolution funding that Monterey County got. We're partnering with Santa Cruz County to address the encampment that's along the Pajaro River. The purpose of this is to put people in housing, not displace them. And it takes a little bit of some time. I didn't even really think about how bureaucratic it would be navigating 2 counties. But regardless, it's a solution. And I just submitted another application for Soledad because there's an encampment in Soledad. Now it's the largest encampment in South County. And even though it's all in unincorporated areas of the county, these folks came from Soledad. So now Soledad and the county are partnering, and we just submitted an application to help those folks. And we just did another one for King City. So this is where the state is actually moving along. They're still standing firm on the encampment resolution funding. I think from the state's perspective, if you think about, they're putting billions of dollars into homelessness, and they want to visibly see the difference. So I think that this is a really good outlet for us because it helps us focus. I've always had this theory that encampments are like tribes, right? They're folks, they trust each other, they're families, they have a hierarchy. And if you plug off a couple of people from that encampment, they don't have the support system. So what happens if we move everybody together? So we're going to try some new things, and we're going to see if it works. And if it works, we'll just keep doing that. Just chase down what works, that's all.
One follow-up question to that, and I think it'll be our last question, is if micro homes have any role, whether in housing people currently in encampments or other people, is there a function to those, and is that something that organizations should be advancing?
Yes. So I'm assuming that when we're talking about micro homes, we're thinking about modulars and not traditional tiny homes or ADUs. So traditional tiny homes, ADUs, they have codes, very, very specific. And people can live the rest of their life in a tiny home or an ADU. They're much more solid, they're here to stay.
And I'm just going to add, because it's part of another question about ADUs, is many ADUs, you can look on Craigslist today at rentals and you'll see them, they're market rate. They are not necessarily affordable by, with the lowercase a for a regular person based on our fair market rate. So this is specific to modular kind of units that are meant as a transitional.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do for the folks living on the Pajaro River. We had sent out an outreach team to interview all of the folks that were there and asked a simple question, what would it take in order for you to go inside? And then they gave us back a list. And it's actually fairly simple. They want privacy, they want to be able to bring their pets, they want to be treated like an adult with dignity and respect, and they want to have access to services that they've been in line for a really long time. And you look at this as a county employee, and you're just like, gosh, it seems so doable. So that's what we're trying to do in the city of Watsonville. There's a lot of new issues with FEMA requirements, floodplain, all these other bureaucratic things that really do matter because it's there to protect the people. But there's absolutely a space. Churches are a great place to start. Churches have parking lots. Usually those parking lots are very big. And there's new laws that has come to play that gives churches a lot of freedom to build on those parking lots. So, absolutely.
And then in closing, I just want to return to this framing about thinking about solutions and ask each of you if just, you know, in 20, 30 seconds you can tell us, should we be hopeful about seeing really meaningful, large-scale solutions for some 6,000 people in our community in our lifetimes, I guess, thinking on that scale? Can we get there?
I am always hopeful, and I'm always going to think that we're going to get there. I want to see it in my lifetime. I'm just going to work as much as I can to get there, and I mean that sincerely. I've been through a lot I've seen this community grow a lot in the past decade I've been working here. I just trust in the agencies that are working hard every day. I trust in our elected officials that have the courage here to keep moving forward and find solutions, and I think that's what we have to keep doing.
We have some really great elected officials in our community. They're so good. And I really do encourage you to get to know them, and because they're just innovative, and we actually have the perfect formula. We have political buy-in in our community, which a lot of communities don't have. We have electeds that really believe in the work that is happening and will stand by it. So I think that's great for you to mention that. I'm hopeful. I've seen change. It's stressful, it's exhausting, but then you meet someone like Elizabeth, and you're like, ugh, all right, I'll go to work tomorrow. because every single story that you hear, every single person who I've cried with and heard about their pathway, it's just a reminder that we're talking about real human beings. Not just the number 2047, we're talking about real human beings. And when I was experiencing homelessness, I just wanted someone to be nice to me. I'm just trying so hard. And it's that simple. So if we can just be kind to each other and show up for each other, we will have that big impact.
Can I ask anyone in the room who's ever worked with me to raise your hand? Anybody who's worked with Roxanne, raise your hand. Anyone who's worked with both of us, raise your hand. Anyone who's donated money for a homeless cause, raise your hand. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can do it, right? I think we can do it. And these agencies in the room, the fact that we all, I'm like, oh, I know these people, because we've all worked so hard together. I think that's what's going to get us through. And get that, how can we be hopeful? Because I see so many people that were standing there, we're going to do it.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because donations is everything to a nonprofit. All of the money that Anastacia and I pump into the community is very restrictive. Who you can serve, how long you can serve them, what type of intervention, and when you're operating with so many funding streams, they're funding stacks. A program can take $1.5–2 million to operate, right? Sounds like a lot of money, but truly it's not. Not when we're talking about lives. What's the value of a life? And these agencies have to navigate all of the regulations of all of those funding streams. And when you start thinking about what they're able to actually produce, it becomes very narrow. So if it's not for donors like you, and Robin didn't ask me to say this, but this is I came from the nonprofit world before I joined the county family. And I just remember those donations went so far, because there's things that people need that's not covered under state and federal grants. So thank you all for everything that you do to support Community Human Services, Gathering for Women, and every other organization out there fighting the fight and showing up.
Thank you both so much.
So I want to thank Sarah for moderating a great conversation. Anastacia, Roxanne, you did not disappoint. Let's hear it once more for Well, again, I want to thank the speakers, and I feel better. I feel like we are in good hands. I did want to say that we have a lot of our partners in the room. There's, besides Gathering for Women and Community Human Services, people are here from the Homeless Coalition and Community Homeless Solutions and Dorothy's and the Fund for Homeless Women and Interfaith Outreach from Carmel and Montage and Allen Friends and I Help. So, I mean, a shout out to all of you. We're all doing the work of science. I also want to thank again our generous sponsors. They helped underwrite costs for today, and there will be a little left over to put into plow back into the mission of Casa de Noche Buena. So thank you to Montage Health, Fund for Homeless Women, Carmel Realty, Interfaith Outreach of Carmel, Carmel Gives, KAZU, and Monterey County Weekly.
As you heard, there's a lot of ways you can help to end homelessness in our community. We can support new affordable housing in our neighborhoods, whether it's ADUs, apartments, or single-family homes. The housing shortage and skyrocketing rents are huge contributions to homelessness. Let's move our neighbors from not in my backyard to yes in my backyard.
As you've seen, helping our friends and neighbors lift them out of homelessness requires tremendous resources. I think that was touched upon repeatedly. And it's no different for Casa de Noche Buena. Today, in honor of the 3rd anniversary of Casa, we are asking you to please consider making a donation to support our work with women and families experiencing homelessness and help us keep our doors open to help those in need. There's several ways you can donate. You can donate online. You can use the QR code. There are envelopes here, and I think there's some in your programs. Or you can go online to either wherever you donate. If you donate to CHS, if you donate to Gathering, or if you donate to the Community Foundation Special Purpose Fund, as long as the donation is directed to Casa, it will end up supporting Casa. So there's no wrong way to donate or support. You can also help by calling answering the call to volunteer for the homeless census and getting your neighbors to participate. And there's volunteer opportunities at both Gathering, Community Human Services, and at Casa de Noche Buena. So find some way to help. It's obvious that you want to help, and we welcome any help you have to offer.
And we have a fun way to support Casa de Noche Buena. Come dance with us at the annual ball next month on Saturday, April 13th, across the street at Carmel Women's Club. It's going to be great fun, and all the proceeds will benefit Casa de Noche Buena. And on that note, thank you for joining us today and for caring for all of our community members. Let's continue our conversation outside. Thanks to Carly and her friends, and thank you again for coming.